So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the organizers to have invited me. And today, I was supposed to give a talk, which was Effect loves Node. But then, last minute, today, I got a better chance of changing the talk. So that's not the one I'm going to give. And I didn't know that I was going to do this today. But this storyline starts a few months ago when we had a conference in Vienna. And this is the YouTube channel. There's all the videos there. But a friend of mine called Maxwell Brown gave a talk. Well, he gave a workshop, but also he gave a very quick talk on Effect CLI. That's one of his projects that is based on Effect and part of the official Effect organization. And while doing that, he had a very funny talk. Maxwell recently became a dad, and he made it as a life mandate to issue a daily dad joke to his coworkers. Well, since Maxwell have joined Effect, Effectful, so I have the pleasure of working on a daily basis with Maxwell. The only issue is that in 22 days of employment, he didn't issue any dad joke. So I was bored, and I called him out in the company Discord. So it was like, okay, Maxwell, there's 22 days of employment, not a single dad joke here. What are we doing wrong? And I was like, oh, holy crap, you're right. I've been slacking. So it's like, I thought you were Discording, actually. So you see the level of conversation starting up from there. But, you know, other people like made one to Mike today, Maxwell becoming an LLM, a large language Maxwell. The quality of discussion was growing over time. So me being pissed off after a few other days without dad jokes, like you do in great companies, if you have inefficiencies, you automate. So this morning, just at 11, I ping Team Smart, another team member of us, say we should add a new feature to the Effect bot. And then it was like, lol. He didn't answer, and after 30 minutes, exactly from the initial message, he used a new feature of the Effect bot that allows you to fetch a dad joke straight up. And this was like, I started telling everyone about the benefits of eating dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness. Yeah, and another person answered, yes, that's what I call dried humor. But this was a pretty funny interaction, and we had a new feature shipped. Another friend of mine said, you should use meetups to announce stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to officially announce that we have a new feature. Hey, folks, we have I am live on stage at the London Node meetup, and I am announcing a new feature of our dear bot, the dad joke. You can use it. But it's done. If everything works, would be pretty odd if it didn't. The bot, as a helpful friend, Steven, this is you. Yeah, okay. As a helpful feature of the bot, it automatically creates a thread, and it gets the thread title from OpenAI. We're not nearly as smart to do it by ourselves, but OpenAI is pretty nice. And here I then can dad joke. I can call a dad joke, why are oranges the smartest fruit? Because they are made to concentrate. Odd. So how does this work? This is a Discord bot that we have a growing community. It was pretty hard to manage everything by our own, so as good companies do, we automated most of the work. And by now, Maxwell can also take rest. He's not doing dead jokes anyway. But now we can. So how does this work? We use GitHub. Like, why not? All the code is in GitHub. It's open source, and we also use it as a way to showcase Effect to people from time to time. I'm not too familiar with that code base, to be honest. Tim wrote it mostly, so I'm just gonna live go through the PR and try to investigate how this feature was implemented. I've downloaded the code already, so I'm pretty sure at least it works. And when downloading the code, first of all, the PRs were introduced today, so I'm not cheating. Let's first add dead joke, and then there's a second PR, which is clean up dead jokes, where he's not removing the dead jokes, come on. He's just adding more metrics around the dead jokes. So this is what made me realize that we actually had OpenTelemetry already integrated. And so before digging into code, I want to take a look at the announcement that we did from a telemetry point of view. So again, as I said, everything is in GitHub. We use fly.io to deploy. Very nice. It's based on Node, so I'm not cheating. Effect still loves Node. It's still the same title of the talk, just content is slightly different. And well, I have my Honeycomb interface open, so I'm just going to refresh on that, and hopefully I see some interactions from a few seconds ago. Okay, recent traces. And okay, first I see some auto threads, which are, okay, there's an error here. Nice. Let's actually go from the query interface, traces. Okay, this looks like it's pretty chunky. Auto threads handle messages. Let's check what's going on here. And as you can see, we have a full telemetry integration where we see exactly what's going on. So we had this handle messages hook. Then we end up calling an HTTP endpoint. Cloudflare. We are using Cloudflare too. Thanks, Cloudflare. Hope you never ban us. This was a call to Discord, because the bot has to interact with Discord to retrieve the message. Then we have the generate title feature that ended up calling OpenAI's API, which is not OpenAPI compliant. It's pretty odd, but then it calls the endpoint. We see that it takes a little bit, this time almost a second, and then we are posting the new message to Discord, which is the thread name. I'm not sure if it's shown anywhere here. Maybe it wasn't this one. I hope I'm not showing anything private here. Anyway, you see a lot of labels, and if stuff goes wrong, you also see errors. Stuff goes right, you can see exactly the shape of things, and you can also derive metrics. So for example, now I know this OpenAI.generate title. What if I want to trace, like I want the average duration milliseconds where the name is OpenAI.generate title. I want to see the average duration, I don't know, over the last 28 days. You see that we have some good metrics, and we realize that the OpenAI API is very variable in response times. Also depends on, I guess, the complexity of the title that it has to generate. But all of this is what you really need when you are developing production code. You should have dashboards that tell you the behavior of your application and so on and so forth. Because if something fails or if you have slowness, bottlenecks, it's going to be pretty hard to guess the bottleneck. And many times when you guess the bottleneck, you guess wrong, and you're actually introducing more overhead where you shouldn't. Telemetry is really a key element of this. But anyway, this is pretty nice. I now want to check the code for this. I have 2 PRs. I usually like to check out stuff locally. I've downloaded the repository ahead of time. And should I zoom in a little bit? That's fine. Yeah. So if we start from the main entry point, this is a pretty common Effect application that runs in a backend, in this case Node.js. And we recognize it because this application is Effect up to the very top, up to the very main entry point of the application. And usually when we use Effect up to this point, we have a very clear understanding of what happens in the app. So in this case, we see that we have a main application that is composed of a few different features. In this case, it's the auto threads that we've seen from the telemetry part. It's the dead jokes. I don't think we would be able to live without dead jokes from now on. Has a no embed thing, which removes embed from other people's messages, and a few other things, such as this is very nice if you have communities. You can create GitHub issues directly from the bot with summarization of a thread. And it is surprisingly behaving well. Sometimes it hallucinates. But it is very, very nice. And then we have a few other services. Then I could extract these in a different variable. Actually, let me do that. Let's call this services. Maybe services live to indicate that we are doing live stuff and not testing one. Services live. I could extract this out, and you would see that this is a layer of our application, and it creates a few things. Actually, creates only one because most of them don't create anything. They just hook into a main thing, as we're going to see. But well, this might fail for a few other reasons, and it doesn't require anything in particular. But we still provided a few things. The stuff that we are providing are customization for things. One is the tracing live, which is the OpenTelemetry integration. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question now? Or
sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, but what is Effect?
Okay, Effect. That might require a different talk. But it is a framework to write production-grade code in TypeScript. It targets primarily backend, but it can be used in a full-stack basis, and it aims to port a lot of concepts from other languages, such as Rust, for example, Scala, and functional programming in general to a broader audience and making it more accessible. So now we are seeing a few features of Effect combined. So this talk by no means is going to answer the question, what is Effect? We have other talks that goes in that direction, but you can consider it a framework to write production-grade code. And what I mean by production-grade code is what I've shown before. You have a new feature. You can introspect the new feature from OpenTelemetry dashboards. You can manage errors. You can manage logging, and so on and so forth, which are things that we're gonna see today. And again, this is the main entry point of our application. We then provided a few things: the tracing live, which is the OpenTelemetry integration, which is configured for Honeycomb. Again, this is not going to explain in details how the integration works, But these 45 lines of code is everything that you need to configure to have your full program emit metrics and telemetry data to an OpenTelemetry provider, in this case, Honeycomb. We do set up the log level from the application, and we do set up a specific logger that also uses OpenTelemetry to add basically log messages to the current span. So this is very classical of Effect. You have this higher order behavior. If you remove this, your app still works, just doesn't speak to Honeycomb. If you integrate this, it speaks to Honeycomb. You don't have to change anything else. So the PR was about adding dead jokes, and let's check in more details how the dead joke functionality is implemented. For this library, team is using his own DFX gateway, which is wrapping the Discord JavaScript library to make it Effect first. So there are going to be some libraries that are referenced here. Effect platform, where we have all the platform-dependent things. We have a platform node package, where you have file system, node sockets, and everything related to Node. In this case, we use the general platform package because we're not tied to a specific runtime implementation. This is assumed to work across different runtimes. We have Effect schema, which allows you, if you're familiar with Zod or IOTS, the past, it allows you to define schemas and then derive encoders, decoders, and anything you want out of your data. Then again, we have DFX, which is the Discord effects library from team. Then we have the main effect and an internal service, which is the Discord thing. Now, in this case, we have a make function, a make effect, which you can consider like the constructor of a service, the thing that is going to be invoked to create the service. It creates an HTTP client to interact with the API of ICANN-has dead joke, which is an API that allows you to fetch dead jokes randomly. Then we have the get joke effect, which is used to fetch a specific dead joke. And we can see that we define a request, which is get on the main endpoint. Here you could do whatever you want. We pipe it into the HTTP client, and we say that the expected shape that we want to receive is a joke, and joke is defined using schema. Here again, you could use something different, but then we say, okay, if anything fails, I want to retry up to 3 times using an exponential backoff curve for avoiding to hit the endpoint too fast. After the retry policy has ended, if we still have an error, I want to consider it a defect with the beautiful combinator effect or die, which you might know from our hats. We have a hat with effect or die, and the best question will receive 1 hat. We have the last one, so I couldn't bring more. And then we say effect with span. This is where we name it so that OpenTelemetry knows how this piece of code, how we want to reference this piece of code. And just with this line, we will automatically have spans created, logs attached to the span. If you have failures, you're going to have the failure collected and rendered in the OpenTelemetry interface. Then we yield a registry, which in this case it's a functionality of the Discord library. So we are registering a new command. We create the command, which is peculiarly named dead joke, and it's described as display a random dead joke. And the implementation of that is going to be get joke, which is the effect that we defined before, and then we want to map the output, and we want to return an interaction registry response. Type 4, this is related to Discord, and the data, the content, we want to have the joke as the content. And as the last thing, we register this specific command into the registry. By the way, this yield star, consider it like a sync await. If your mental model, you think this function as a sync await, mentally swap yield star for await, and mentally swap function star as a sync, and you have the same precise mental model that applies across. Well, basically, the mental model is the same, but the key difference is here we are just describing stuff. Declaring an effect does not run the code that it's inside. It's going to be performed only when we invoke the effect at a later point, which allows us for this higher order ability to do, for example, retries and stuff like that. With a promise, you would not be able to say promise.retry, because when you create the promise, the operation already started. So how would you restart something that is already ongoing? This is the inherent power of effect. And as you see, we have 3 parameters. The first is the return type, same as a promise. But the other 2, if I remove this effect or die from here, no, I do not want an emoji. If we remove this from here, you see that in the second parameter, this might fail for 2 known reasons. It might fail because the response is of a different shape than the one that we are expecting, or it might fail for HTTP reasons because, well, it is a network call. What we are doing here with this line is we are saying if there is any of those failure, treat them as exceptions, because at this point, after we have retried, we don't really consider this anymore a normal case. We want the application to fail. So we want the application to die in this case. And the end type is an effect that returns a joke, which is exactly what we get here in the implementation. And again, we map it back. This is pretty much everything that was necessary for team to integrate that. You see that here we have the make function, and then we say, okay, make a layer out of it. We don't care at all about the return value of this, because we're not creating a service that anyone else is going to use. We're just hooking into a global registry. So we don't need this return type. Other services where we use that will return. Let's check, for example, the OpenAI service. The OpenAI service, the layer, in this case, has an OpenAI thing, an OpenAI object. So in this case, it's a service that somebody else is going to use. In this other case, this is like the main entry point. So we have just a void, and the final layer doesn't return anything. It can only fail if it's misconfigured. And this is another interesting part. Where are we even getting the configuration? Well, Effect has a way of reading environment configurations automatically that by default we use the process.env to retrieve configurations, but you could plug whatever configuration backend you want, even extremely complex backends that centralize configs and so on and so forth. So everything you see in Effect is pluggable. And again, all this code was, well, in 69 he implemented a new pretty funny feature with telemetry integration and everything else. So now that we know, for example, the call to retrieve a dead joke is called in this way, we could quite easily go back to our query interface, name, see, get joke, oh, we find it, query. You see, we did get 2 jokes. Who has got the second joke in the last 2 hours? Yeah, it was still me, probably. And here we see, okay, that the call to get joke was from a Discord interaction, and then it ended up doing an HTTP GET, calling the API endpoint on ICANN has dead jokes. How are we doing with time?
You're 5 minutes over.
I have 5 minutes. Good. Oh, I'm 5 minutes over. Perfect. Yes, that was it. Thank you.
5 minutes over, but do we have any questions? You had one in the middle, so there's one over there. Do you want to just it's a small enough room.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the talk, it was really great. I really like the approach of Effect, where you're kind of trying to make functional programming more accessible, having come from FEPS, where it very much didn't do that. But still, it's quite a big difference from other frameworks in the Node ecosystem. And I'm curious how you kind of like market Effect, or how you expose it to the world to make it more popular.
Well, the question is, why is this different, in a sense, from anything else? Is because if you do the same thing as anything else, you can't really resolve stuff like higher order retries, integrations to telemetry backend, logging. It's very limited. And if you have to handle errors with try-catch, there's not much you can do around that to make it better. So we have to do things differently. We try to make it as accessible as possible, and we work really hard in that. For example, the generator syntax, being able to use generators and mentally map between async await to generators, helps newcomers at least have the same way of programming. You're not forced into odd combinators like you were in FPTS. How do we market it is a very interesting question, and I would say that we don't, in a sense. I'm not really convincing new people to use Effect. Our users are people who are in pain from writing production-grade softwares. We have companies such as, for example, Zendesk. They serve millions of customers. They have errors constantly. We have companies such as MarkPrompt. They were getting traction in Y Combinator on their product, and they were suffering from reliability. So in our case, the newcomers already felt the pain, and just learning something new, even if it is slightly big, with Effect, it has a progressive learning curve. You don't need to know everything to use it, but it is definitely an investment in time. But it's either you do that investment in time or continue to feel the pain of integrating telemetry, metrics, and everything else in your app without any help, which I don't know if you've ever seen actual real use cases of that. It is going to be very painful. So it's kind of made for large use cases where the learning curve is acceptable. That's how we market it, but I'm not a marketer, so if anyone has ideas, that's
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So before we
Microphoning you.
Appear,
So this is one.
to say 2 words. One is, that's the intuition. community announcements. Did anyone have anything they wanted to share? Jeff wants to share
And
something.
we also have to
Go for it.
plug this in. No, sorry. It's two separated microphones. This is for recording, and this is.
Yep.